Well, you find me now on the ACIC stand with Luciano Calenti, and you are not only the founder but the chief executive of this company.
That's correct.
And how old is the company?
43 years.
And could you explain what exactly do you do as a business?
As a business, we started purely in active pharmaceutical ingredients, and then over the years we evolved to dosage forms, and now we even went into biologicals, and we also build plants for other countries, and we sell equipment, very sophisticated injectable equipment. So we are diversified, but all within the pharmaceutical area.
And your background is really extraordinary because you're not a chemist by training, but you did economics, is that correct?
That's correct. I did economics, but I was very lucky to have very good chemists working for me. And while I did not know chemistry, I helped the chemists solve a lot of their problems, because it's not what you know, but who you know. And then when we had a problem, I knew who to pick up the phone and get things resolved without knowing any chemistry.
And they always say the secret of a great business is knowing the right people to call, not necessarily being the smart one, but knowing smart people.
That's correct, and it still is.
And so tell me, how has the business evolved then over the years? So you started, as you said, with the active pharmaceutical ingredient. It's evolved tremendously in those years.
Yes, it has evolved tremendously. The science has changed. It's becoming much more sophisticated, and the rules from the FDA in particular are very tight, and the world is following the FDA rules eventually. And as they're implementing rules even in countries like China and India, we find a much better level playing field for everybody to be much more competitive. And while I started mainly with Italian suppliers, I still have 80% of my suppliers come from Italy, and we're very successful.
And in terms of what you make, are you making branded drugs, or are you making generic drugs, or a mixture of the two?
We make generic drugs at ACIC, but we have a company which is doing niche branded drugs, which is Metapharm, and they're licensing in European products for the world market, and particularly for the United States and Canada. And our first licensee was from Roche, which is a big company, and we took a product from them, and that's how we started the company.
And what sort of generics do you make? Could you give me an idea?
Well, many injectable products, particularly antibiotics. Antibiotics were the beginning of our company. A lot of the colleagues are still within 100 meters from this stand. They are my colleagues where we started business with their fathers or grandfathers, and we still do business together. So we have second and third generation people that we cooperate with in antibiotics and other products. Anti-cancer is growing after the antibiotics, and also we're getting into the insulin, which is a very sophisticated business for the future.
And is this normally when drugs come off patent that you are then able to make the generic?
They come off patent, or we participate with partners into the Paragraphforce, which is a challenge of a patent, which is done legally in the States. And when you're successful, you have 6 months of marketing a generic without other generic competition, and that's where the real margins are.
I can imagine. Now, what about business in developing countries? You know, there are examples where, and certainly in some emerging markets, where they've allowed generics to be made. Is that a place you see your business?
Well, you know, it's a mixed bag, because I have seen in underdeveloped country, when the product is made in the underdeveloped country, that the resistance comes from the buyer. The buyers don't want to buy products made in their own country because they're not sure of the quality. Only the government, who buys on bids, will buy it, but the private individuals will still prefer an imported product.
I think that's very true. Trust is very important when you take a medication. You are relying not only on the active pharmaceutical ingredient, the formulation, the quality control. You need to make sure it's been made properly.
Absolutely, absolutely. And it's not easy. It's difficult. You even have big companies in the States that get smacked by the FDA, and therefore the trust of a new company in a small underdeveloped country is difficult. It takes years to gain the trust. It's not impossible, but I can tell you that now the biggest thing in China is buying imported pharmaceutical products because they don't trust the products which are made locally.
Isn't that extraordinary? And yet in other markets like the UK, we're importing generics from India for lots of reasons, not least legislation.
Exactly. And well, you can see how the world is upside down. In China now, the Chinese government has decided to pay a premium to those Chinese manufacturers that get FDA approval because they trust the controls of the US FDA more than their own FDA.
Which is totally upside down.
Exactly.
So, okay, and what do you think about the patent process? Is 20 years, this is a very difficult question, is 20 years too long?
Well, I believe a patent is to make sure that the inventor is rewarded. The only area in all the businesses in the world where a patent means a monopoly is pharmaceuticals, and I think it's wrong. You have to have a patent, yes. Does it mean it has to be a monopoly? I don't agree.
I don't agree either. I'm with you 100%, and I think the only people that suffer as a result are people in need, people with disease, people who need drugs that they can't afford.
Exactly, and quite frankly, rewarding an invention is absolutely correct, but a monopoly on life and death is something that I find difficult to live with. So while I work with brand and generic, I think about it when I'm selling my brand to be reasonable.
Well, I could talk to you all day, so thank you very much indeed for sharing some time with me, and I wish you a great deal of success here at CPhI Worldwide.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.